Canon just announced 2 new cameras and 2 new lenses, but there's one thing in particular that I want to talk about, and that's the new Canon R50V. Now you're probably watching this video saying, hey, aren't you the guy that switched to Sony a few months ago? Why are you talking about Canon? And I think that this new release of the Canon R50V is kind of cool, and I want to talk about it. And if you don't know my roots, I actually started out with a Canon R50, so them coming out with the new kind of revamped version for the vlogging style kind of piqued my interest, so I looked it up and I want to talk about it and give my reaction. So a couple things about the Canon R50V that I noticed is that it is smaller than the Canon R50. So if you know anything about the R50, you know that it's small in itself. It's an APS-C sensor camera, 24 megapixels, 1 dual card slot. Is kind of video centric, but you can take pictures with it because it did have a EVF and an internal flash. But the new Canon R50V does not have internal flash, does not have a viewfinder. Still APS-C, obviously, but it's in an even smaller body than a Canon R50, which, I mean, I guess if for what the camera is used for is not a big deal, but for some people it might be a deal breaker. I mean, you look at like the Sony ZV-E1, those things are tiny. I think the A6000 series, they're pretty small too, so that's not a big deal, but it's smaller. The Canon R50V is a smaller body than the Canon R50, so ergonomically it's small. But when you talk about functionality of the Canon R50V, especially in comparison to the Canon R50, if you look at the front of the camera of the Canon R50, there is a record button on the front of the camera. Not only is there a record button on the front of the camera, there's also a tally light to tell you when you are recording. So how convenient is it if, like, I'm gonna record on a Sony a7 IV right now? How convenient would it be if I can just push a button on the front of the camera and know I'm recording? Now, thankfully, I have an external monitor, so I can do all this stuff. I can see the back of my screen while looking at the front of my screen or whatever. But how convenient is that there's a record button right on the front of the camera instead of having to touch the top or the back or wherever the record button would be on most other cameras. This camera also does have a flip out screen, and if I'm not mistaken, it does get the red box around the screen to tell you that you're recording as well as the tally light. So I think that is pretty cool. If you look at the top of the camera, you'll see ergonomically it's pretty simple. You have your record button, you have your mode dial, your shutter dial, and then you have your hot shoe, but it's not really a hot shoe because you can't put a flash on it. That's just where you're going to put your audio jack, whether it be DJI, hot shoe mount, or boom mic, whatever. But if you do look, there is a live button, and that is for live streaming. So you can click one button and go right into live streaming. So that's really good for streamers and the like. I mean, imagine someone like me who makes YouTube videos having this button. You can just hit go live, hit the camera, boom, and then you're good. I think that is a really cool addition to the Canon R50V, and that's just something that I was like, wow, like who would have thought of that? I mean, you have other, I guess, I don't know, maybe there's another camera that has that, but anyway, when it comes to streaming, when it comes to live streaming, you can record at 4K. The Canon R50, you can only do 1080 through the camera, so that is pristine. And if you look at the back of the camera, you'll see it's pretty simple. You just have your standard D-pad, a couple buttons here and there. You see the articulating screen. So it's a smaller R50, but with more features, which I think is really cool. Now, some of the things that really stood out to me as far as capabilities of this camera is that it can record all the way up to 4K 60. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it did say the 4K 60 has a crop. Now, cropping on an APS-C, I don't know how that would work, because when you go from so like APS-C is like the 1.6 times full frame equivalent. So I don't know if you crop an APS-C, would it be like 2 point something or 3? I really don't know how that crop's gonna work, but there's a 4K 60 out of crop, but it can record up to 4K 60, which I think is pretty neat. Another thing that I think is really cool for the Canon R50V is that it can record log. So you can record C-Log 3. So if you are talking about just wanting to get better quality with color grading, and if you're a vlogger or whatever, like, that is an addition that I was like, wow, who would have thought to do that? I mean, everybody would have thought to do that, I guess, if you're in the manufacturing space, but I think that's a really cool addition. And one thing that I forgot about and I missed is that ergonomically, if you look on the side of the camera, there is a 1/4-20 mount. So if you want to mount it on its side vertically on a tripod or on a gimbal to do vertical content, you can do that instead of having to mount it on the bottom and then flip it horizontal or flip it vertically. You can just mount it right there vertically straight into the camera, which I think is really cool. So this camera is calling everybody who does short form content, who likes to make reels. This is a camera that is perfect for creators, that is perfect for live streamers, short form content, long form content. I think this is the perfect camera for that. This camera does take the same battery as the Canon R50, which is the LPE17. And if you're wondering, the weight is like 370 grams, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 370 grams. And the price. So for all this, you're getting all this for $649 for the body only. Now, if you're anything like me, I do recommend buying this camera body only and then buying a separate lens to go with it. I know that they just released a 14-30 APS-C lens to kind of pair with this camera, but it's a kit lens. I mean, it has a variable aperture, and that's something that I just wouldn't recommend. So I think if it was me buying this Canon R50V, I would buy it with a 16mm so that the crop would take it to 24, or I don't know if I think there's like a 10-18 crop sensor lens, but I think that's a variable aperture as well. So if you want shallow depth of field and you want a sharper lens, I recommend going with a prime. And I think that'll be the 16. I think that'll be the best. The 24 is still wide enough to vlog with, if you ask me, but I guess depending on your height, your arm length, your size, or whatever, I guess wider would be better. So a 10-18 might make more sense. Actually, Sigma has RF lenses, and you can look there. I think Sigma has like a pretty decent zoom lens for the crop sensor that's wide angle. So I would recommend looking at Sigma for the lenses, but I do like that it has interchangeable lenses. So when we're talking about doing video on the go, you can get really small, compact, and you can get really light lenses to go with it. So I think this camera is really perfect for creators, for YouTube creators, short form content creators, long form content creators. And I just think this camera's really cool. And I'm going to check to see if I missed anything. I don't think I did, but let me see if I did. Okay, so I don't think I did, but everything I talk about in today's video is really all I wanted to touch on anyway. So if you like this video is some value to you, and you want to check out the new Canon R50V, I don't have any links for it. I'm not sponsored or anything. I just wanted to talk about it because I thought it was cool. But like and subscribe to the channel. There'll be a lot more content like this where this came from. And shout out to all y'all for getting me to partner status. You can join the members club. I got some content coming out for members only. So yeah, appreciate y'all. And until next time, peace.